This is the Classic Auto Mall Show. Broadcast from the studios inside the Classic Auto Mall in Morgantown, Pennsylvania. Just 1 hour west of Philadelphia at Pennsylvania Turnpike exit 298. Featuring nearly 1,000 classic, vintage, and barn-find vehicles for sale under one climate-controlled roof. Now, here's your host, Classic Auto Mall president and the man with all the toys, Stewart Howden.
I'm great. How are you, brother?
We are doing fantastic. You know, we've been talking about doing this for about a year and a half, and it's hard to get schedules and everybody on the same page and all that, but we're really glad to have you. I didn't know this about you. You were born in one of my favorite towns, and the reason it's my favorite town is my favorite company is located in your hometown, Mayfield Dairy Farms.
Oh, yeah, man. You know, there's a bunch of folks that are Bluebell aficionados, and they all these other ice cream. They ain't nothing like Mayfield's.
I'm with you 100%. I try to figure out a way to bring some home every time I come back to Pennsylvania because I love their ice cream sandwiches are the best and their brown cows are the best. And we could do a whole show on Scotty Mayfield and the success of Mayfield Dairy. But one of these days, the Pennsylvanians will get it. They don't quite understand food up here, Corky. It's not like in the South. So,
you know, I remember coming to Hershey back in the 60s, and I'd go to Friendly's or something like that and ask for grits, and they said, well, what's that? Is that ground up corn husks?
Yeah, that's a perfect description of what they think it is. I'll never forget the first time I was here. We had a dealer auction and we had a cafeteria, and the girl knew I was from the South, from Knoxville, and she said, "Oh, you're going to really love lunch tomorrow." She said, "We're having chicken pot pie," and I said, "Oh, I love chicken pot pie." And she brings out this plate the next day, and it's this soupy looking stuff with these round clumps of dough. I said, "That's chicken and dumplings." She goes, "No, that's chicken pot pie." I go, "You don't know. They don't know."
So, it's got to be in a little round tin about that big, so you can put it on the plate and cut it yourself. And, you know, steam comes out just like Mama used to make them.
You know, we could do a whole show on food, so I guess we somehow digressed here. But anyway, thanks again for being on the show. So tell me, where's the name Corky come from? I think I know the answer, but tell our listeners where that comes from.
Well, you know, my mama said, we're going to name him Joseph, and it was after the young man who had the coat of many colors and in the Bible. So she wanted to have a Bible name, and the Jewish description or definition means productive. And I guess that kind of said something about me too. But my dad was a big and very voracious Sunday morning paper reader, and he would read the Sunday morning comic strips. And one of those that still exists today is Gasoline Alley. And the guy that rode around in the cart picking up junk and parts and stuff, there was several people in that Gasoline Alley comic strip, but the name stuck. My dad says, you're gonna name him Joseph, but we're gonna always call him Corky, and it stuck.
Boy, it did ever. Have you ever met anybody else named Corky?
Oh yeah, lots of folks. I've got a mason down the way that does some brickwork for me, and there's not too many one-name wonders in the that have the name Corky in the automotive aftermarket and antique car hobby.
I would think so. I think that was true. We were speaking of the antique car and the car hobby. The Chattanooga Motoring Fest has really become a must-attend event for everybody on their calendar, and you obviously are a big part of that. Tell us a little bit about how that all got going and where it's headed.
Well, we're going into our fourth year, and we've got some really big plans. We've been talking to you guys at Classic Auto Mall about coming. We hope that you're coming with bells on, and we'd love to have you here. Our event happens downtown Chattanooga. We have a wonderful historic downtown that where we block off a number of city streets. There's restaurants on the streets. There's places for Mama to go shopping when she gets tired of looking at hubcaps and checking out to make sure that the original tires are on all those collector cars.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a really wonderful event. It happens the week after Hershey, the second week in October. You can find out anything you want to find out about it at ChattanoogaMotorcar.org. And it's a really wonderful event. Sunday, we have our Chattanooga Motorcar Concourse on the grounds there in the West Village, in downtown Chattanooga. It's around the Westin. My partner and friend Byron DeFore owns a number of the hotels down, and his brother Ken own a number of the hotels. We have a 1.62 mile racetrack on private property right downtown, within 2 blocks of the Westin.
Right.
My museum is on Chestnut Street, next door to the Chattanooga Hamilton County Convention Center. Yep. It will host the 3rd year of the Meekum auction there. Yeah. So you guys can come down here and buy a lot of inventory and take it back to Pennsylvania to sell
to all the folks up here, right? Folks up here. If you've never been to Chattanooga, I was back there last year for the first time in hundreds of years before I was there last, and it's a wonderful town. It really has grown in a nice format and way that it's not overgrown and crazy busy like some of the places have gotten. But I mean, it's got the coolest downtown I've been to in a long time.
Well, we're very proud of Chattanooga, and we've got a city council and a county commission that work together. 2 county mayors that really support the Chattanooga Motorcar. We've got the World Rally Association coming down to race cars. They're going to have a headquarters in Chattanooga and race those rally cars in Cherokee National Forest and some of the areas close to us. We've got, obviously, I mentioned this downtown racetrack. This year, we have a very special event that I'm kind of sponsoring and heading up at the racetrack and on the show field also. It's Mercer versus Stutz.
Oh, I love it.
And we're going to have a whole group on the racetrack with Mercer's racing Stutz automobiles, because you got to be nuts to drive a Stutz, but it's worser if you drive a Mercer.
Oh, worser. That's a good Tennessee word. I like that a lot. Yeah, so right. Is there talk of the track becoming a permanent type facility? Is that going to happen someday, or is it all going to be a street course like it has been in the past?
No, well, we've always had the majority of it on the Bend property, which is a development that they're building a whole West Village downtown next to the river with venues, and they've got a river going through it, like down in San Antonio. Sure. It's will be an artificial river, but there's a battery producer there. There's talk of local manufacturer automobiles maybe having a stronger presence downtown. We think that there's a good possibility we will keep this racetrack on the facility downtown, and who knows what that might move to. If we've got a really wonderful looking track, it doubles into itself a lot. It's got some really cool chicanes. It goes through a huge big remnant of a building. We've got big pictures of some of the greats drivers of the years, and it's called the Alley of the Greats. It's well thought out. We've got a children's area with a Ferris wheel. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting. If you've never been to it, you owe it yourself to go. And your specialty when it comes to these is the pre-war, the big, like the Mercer and the Stutz and the Nybergs and all that. And I mean, those cars, those are not easy cars. You don't just get in and turn the key on one of those, right?
Well, you got to be a very smart individual. You've got to be athletically, you got to be handsome too, in your jumpsuits, all of that stuff to drive one of those cars. I'm just kidding, but it's a great fun time. We've got the ragtime racers. My friend Brian Blaine will come from California, and we'll have about 10 or 12 early nationals and Sturdivant. There's EMFs, Chalmers, a number of race cars like that will be going around the track and doing the dance together, going around the track. It's a great fun time. And then, of course, we'll have Mercers and Stutzes, and then there'll be Porsches. And this year we've got a really wonderful grouping of about 30 of the greatest of the great Ferraris.
Really? Wow.
Been sanctioned by our good friend Bill Marriott.
Yeah.
He has loaned us his name. He's got some really amazing Ferraris, and we're creating a club that's focused around Chattanooga. So all these folks will come to Chattanooga and be involved in showing off and driving their Ferraris. We've got Luft this time coming to the Porsche cars coming to set up a display downtown.
Wow.
We've got Canosa going to do a rally. It's all happening in Chattanooga the week after Hershey, second weekend in October. So be here and have fun with us.
Absolutely. So driving one of these pre-war cars at, let's say, 70 or 80 miles an hour feels like 200 in any other car. Is it really?
It does. It does. There were a lot of cars. If you'll look up some of the records in 1911, 12, 13, some of the average speeds were 70, 80 miles an hour. And back then, that's when racers were real men. And today, we honestly, with some of these early race cars, we wear safety helmets and we wear jumpsuits, et cetera, but we do not wear seat belts because these cars, if you happen to wreck them or flip them, you want to move quickly away from the automobile.
Absolutely. That makes 100% sense. So, and I love that, like you were just talking about, the period correct attire of your guys. Do you visit every thrift store in America to find this stuff? Where do you find that stuff?
You can find it on eBay. You can find it on, there's a really wonderful website called Historical Emporium that sells a lot of stuff. You can buy dusters. You can buy. My wife and I, when we attend concourses all over, we've got a number of brass cars, and we love to dress up in period clothing. And people they just gravitate to our car. At Amelia this last year, we showed our 1911 Mercer raceabout. And I had on my vintage boots, and she wore a big hat. And we have a great time, and people enjoy seeing us.
Absolutely. And do you participate in other historic races around the country, or is it just in Chattanooga?
This year in June, I'll be at Indy, and we've got some in August. We'll be at Laguna Seca for the Monterey Historics.
I bet a Mercer through the corkscrew is pretty fun at Laguna.
Oh my goodness. Mercer is the best no matter what you're doing with it. Actually, in Chattanooga last year, we had a long straightaway on a city street, and we determined to get the race course adapted so it's all on private property. But I was doing about 70 miles an hour in that 1911 Mercer down Riverfront Parkway.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's something for, not for the faint of heart. And of course, in the old days, the real racers would have a cigarette dangling out of their mouth, right?
Oh yeah. But what else they did to Stewart? Those guys that raced at Indy, they wore those white jumpsuits. But if you looked at those original pictures, they had a white tie. And a white shirt, and had a tie underneath all their jumpsuits. And, they had goggles, and there was oil all over them, and they would get out and they'd start changing tires. But Ralph Mulford, who placed second in Indy in 1911, some people say he placed first, but he basically was changing tires, and he had a tie on in the race.
Well, the days of dressing up are long since gone, I believe. But anyway, when we return, we'll continue our visit with Mr. Corky Coker on the Classic Auto Mall podcast. See you in a couple of minutes.
Buying and selling via consignment is safe, easy, and secure. We advertise, sell, and ship worldwide. And if you'd like to know all the advantages of selling your car through consignment, the information's available on our website, or you can talk to a classic car specialist who can answer all your questions. Plus, you can easily search our inventory online at classicautomall.com.
And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast from the Classic Auto Mall studio in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, with 937 of our best friends' cars here. And hopefully we're selling a few today, although it seems a little slow. I think April 15th may have something to do. People may not be thinking about buying cars today. And we've got our special guest, Corky Coker, on the show with us today. And we were just talking about how Chattanooga has become such an up-and-coming area or city. But there's some great stuff around the area. You mentioned the National Forest, but how about the Tail of the Dragon? Have you taken any of the brass cars up to there?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I remember growing up as a kid, my dad we'd go on car tours everywhere, and we went. I grew up in the back seat of a 1910 Rio or a 1930 Murray-bodied Model A sedan. But I remember cutting those curves and those dips on the Tail of the Dragon. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's an amazing place, and it's not only the Tail of the Dragon is a great road. There's the road down to Fontana Dam up there is really amazing. I mean, the whole Great Smoky Mountains is just a beautiful part of the world if you've never been there. And of course, I wanted to touch back on the rally that you were talking about. I mean, that's amazing. Rally is not. You don't see it a lot in the United States, and I think it's something that we'd really appreciate if we understood it.
For years I owned the Great Race. When I sold Coker Tire Company, I sold it with the company. But those time, speed, endurance rallies and rallying with vintage cars in the hills of western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee, going through Murrable, Murrable, yeah, and in North Alabama, North Georgia. Teresa and I live in the most northwestern town in Georgia, in Wildwood, Georgia. It's just so wonderful. If we've got a number of people that come and visit the Coker Museum here, and we've got a friend who have outlined about. I think he's got about 12 different tours. You can go out and do a 3-hour drive. Right. And you can go over to Jack Daniel's Distillery across Monteagle Mountain. You can go down the valley. It's just wonderful. Rally for Canosa this year will go to Highlands and stay at Old Edwards Inn and come back in on Thursday. We've got V8s in the Village on Saturday. It's just going to be a wonderful weekend. So I encourage everybody to come.
And if you've never been to Highlands, North Carolina, boy, oh boy, oh boy, that's a really beautiful part of the world. And they have a motoring fest up there as well too. I think it's nice to see that it used to be you didn't see many events like this in the South. They were always in the Northeast in this part of the world or out on the West Coast. And boy, the South has really picked up on doing these. And even I guess if you call Amelia Island the South, I'm not sure if you call Florida the South, but it's funny the car hobby or business, if you will. Has changed a lot over the years, yet in some ways it hadn't changed at all. I mean, we still sell Model A Fords, and who would think that anybody won't be interested in buying a Model A Ford? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Mark Smith auction and the amount of money that the little Model T, the Mercury bodied with the 16-valve Franny overhead valve motor, brought $70,000. How, a 1903 Model A Ford, right. It's not the same Model A that we're thinking about from 28 to 31, but brought what, 170 grand or something like that.
And the Model K Ford brought 370 something $1,000, which those are, the Model K Ford is probably the Duesenberg of Fords. It was the one that they tried to make it upscale. And realized that probably wasn't their core market.
That's right.
It's funny. You mentioned the Great Race, and you guys basically revived that from the.
I brought it out of bankruptcy. And it really is an amazing event. It's the greatest fun that you can have with your car. I say with your clothes on.
I thought that's where you were going.
Yeah, but it is a time, speed, endurance rally, and you show up in these little towns, and 30,000 people come out, and they, I remember my son Cameron started going with me in our Schaefer 8 Indy car when he was 12 years old, and he signed for the whole week or 2 weeks. He signed maybe 300 autographs from the brochure, and we flew back into Chattanooga. And we got at the airport, and we walked in the airport, and my 12-year-old son said, "Dad, where are our peeps?"
Yeah, you kind of get a little taste of that fame, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about the Great Race is that come hell or high water, it's snow, rain, sleet. It doesn't matter. You're racing. You don't stop for weather.
Yeah. Funny thing, Stewart. I'd show up in towns and in the Schaefer 8, and my the question I was asked most of the time. I was asked two questions, actually. What do you do when it rains? And I look at them with a befuzzled look, and I just say, I get wet.
It's amazing.
And then they would ask me, where do you get tires for these? And I'd look at them befuzzled. I got to do more advertising. I know 50% of it work. I just don't know which 50%.
Which 50%? That's the thing. We advertise all over the world, our place, and then a guy will be just over the other side of the mountain. He'll say, "Didn't know you were here. We've been here 5 years. We're 336,000 square feet. How did you not know we were here?" But the one thing that Coker Tire did that we do a lot of, and we kind of modeled it after what you did, is you decided long ago when you were doing this that you went to the events where the people were. So you went to Hershey and Carlisle and all these events and set up your little show there, and that became the way because that one-on-one with people is the best way to explain what it is you do.
That's right. And I will tell you, Stewart, that when I came back from college in 1974, my dad said, "Here, I want you to take this little fledgling part of our business and I want you to make it go." And I did, and it did. But he said, "You really only need to do one show, and that's Hershey." And I did not agree with that. And I slept in the back of a truck. I slept in the back of a van, and I went everywhere. And I remember in our biggest heyday a few years back, we would have 4 tractor trailers at Hershey, and I had 3 10-foot tables side by side, and I had like 8 guys with a computer there, and there were 5 to 8 people behind each one of them. Oh. But my point to you is, those people would come and buy something, or they would ask if we get, but they would also come and say, "Hey, did you ever think about building a tire for this?" And
right.
Or they would come to you at Classic Automobile booth and say, "Hey, do you guys have maybe a, what was it that you said earlier? You had I forget.
A 2002 Oldsmobile Intrigue.
Chrysler New Yorker.
Yeah.
Yes. You got one of those?
We do. So yeah, exactly. That's the way it works. And, we set up a big tent at Hershey up underneath the sign, and it was an area that nobody wanted. It was up on the grass in between the car corral and the main road out there, the main highway in front of Hershey and in front of the park. And we set up there. And the minute we set up there, everybody wanted that spot. Nobody had wanted it for 25 years. But that's how it works in this business. But we love going out to the events and talking to the people and telling them about what it is that we do. Because if you ever tried to explain the size of our building, 336,000 square feet, it's like describing the color blue, like I said earlier. People don't really grasp it. And then they walk in here and they go, "Oh, wow, this is amazing." So, and when you're one-on-one with people, you can do that. And that's how you grow a business, in my opinion.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Stewart, I've got a question.
Yeah.
I see in the corner of my screen over there, I see you've got a guitar hanging there. What's that about?
Well, we're hoping to get some famous musical guests to come in here and play guitar for us, but we've yet to convince them, although I'm friends with a few after living in Branson, Missouri. So I've got Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers hopefully coming in to be on our podcast. However, I'm not sure if he knows how to play guitar. So. As you were starting the show, I saw the edge of that guitar, and I went over behind myself, and I got my instrument out here. That is a 5-string banjo, and that's a Prussia. That is a Czechoslovakian built banjo, specifically built for a friend of mine, Russ Carson from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. He is the banjo picker for Ricky Skaggs and Kentucky Thunder. Car guy, met him at Hershey years ago. But I'm a banjo picker and love music as well. So that's why I had to ask you that. Well, my ex-father-in-law, I was living in Branson, Missouri, was Mel Tillis. And so I was married to Mel. Exactly. I finished his sentence one time. That was the only time I ever did something like that. You didn't do that, and it didn't go well. But Mel was a great guy. I mean,
coffee out.
sorry about that. I'll try to time it a little better when I'm going to say something funny. Yeah, Mel was great, though. We had a theater in Branson, and we met everybody. Garth Brooks was there, and Jerry Lewis, and you just name it. I got to watch Sunday football with Dick Butkus on Mel's couch in his dressing room. You talk about, you die and go to heaven type stuff. Yeah. But so we love music, so we were hoping to have somebody in here play, because I know I'm a really good air guitar player, but that's about it. So I just have it there in hopes that someday we'll have somebody in here famous that knows how to play it, and we'll you don't want to ever miss an opportunity, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
So do you miss the tire business at all? Do you miss that? It had to have been a grind. I know it was fun for you and you enjoyed it and you built a great business. It had to be a little bit of a grind as well.
I did it for 45 years. My father had long since passed, and he wanted to make sure that when I purchased the business from him, that I would never sell it as long as he was alive. And I saw things changing a little bit, and my two children were not interested at the time. So, and it was big. I had 150 employees. I had a production facility, a 100,000 square foot production facility in Los Angeles, and made rims and flew 200,000 miles a year and all that sort of stuff. So it did become a grind, but I do miss the people, and I miss solving problems. Right. And you can't choose the direction of the business takes after you sell it. And I wish this private equity company be doing a lot of things different. Sure. There's not as many car guys running it as I would like, but who knows? Maybe they want some of my opinions, and
maybe they don't. Was there was no clause in the contract on your opinions, right?
No, I can get, and there's also no clause that says they got to take my opinion.
Right, exactly. So, but what's funny about business in general is I got to imagine that, we all have different perspectives. I have a business partner in this business, and sometimes, our perspectives are a little bit different, and we try to, the ebb and flow and give and take and all that. But, sometimes it's hard to do. But anyway, when we return, if you can stick with us for another segment, Corky, we'd love to have you for a few more minutes on here.
Yeah, sure.
When we return to the Classic Auto Mall podcast, we'll continue this in-depth conversation with Mr. Corky Coker. See you in just a minute.
Whether you want to buy or sell a classic, collectible, or special interest vehicle, you need to visit the Classic Auto Mall website for more information. If you're looking to buy, you can easily search our inventory of more than 1,000 vehicles on the web at classicautomall.com.
And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast from the Classic Auto Mall studio in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, where it's still cloudy, overcast, but it's sunny in here, and it's sunny in Chattanooga, I'm hoping.
Yes, sir.
That's all that matters. So I got to ask you, when you head to your place in the northeast corner of Georgia, what's your daily driver? What do you drive? What's your?
Well, I got about 250 vehicles here that I can choose. My 1911 Pierce, or I've got a wonderful 34 Ford pickup truck that's original, never been restored, and it's got a T5 behind the flathead with a little cam, and it just purrs and goes down the road at 70 miles an hour. Or, I drive a pickup truck. Man, you never know when a man needs to haul something.
Isn't that the truth? My wife got onto me yesterday because we bought a Denali pickup truck, which is really not a pickup truck. And, it's not really designed to haul stuff. And I'm throwing stuff in the back of it. She goes, well, you're just tearing up your new truck. And I said, honey, if I was going to buy something that we weren't going to put anything in, I'd have bought a Suburban or, something else. It is a truck. And of course, then I scratched a big scratch in the bed. And she, of course, I told you so came. So, it is what it is. So she always knows more than I do. And that's, thank God she's around. Listen, if my wife wasn't here, the success of my business would be about a quarter of what it is.
Yeah. And you'd be a wreck.
Yeah. Yeah, which I am anyway. So, my job, unfortunately, is not as much dealing with the cars as it is now spreadsheets and marketing and all that. And what I was alluding to with you is that, I sit in front of my computer most days and I hear the guys test driving the cars out side there, over there, and I'm, crunching numbers and doing all that stuff, and I miss that part of it sometimes. But that's part of being successful and growing a business, right? I mean, it's just
you got to do it.
You got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. What was interesting though, I read somewhere about back in the day that when you all were starting is that you'd see Duesenbergs on truck tires because nobody was making tires that fit a Duesenberg.
That's right. Absolutely true. In any one given time, Stewart, I probably had 10 or 12 new tire molds in production, and some of those would only sell annually, 40 tires. And our production runs were 200 tires. Now, it became a dilemma when, some of the tire industry came together, and government hasn't come to say to the tire or the automotive industry, tires only last 10 years. You can't sell them after they're 10. No, I've sold tires that are 25 years old, and as long as they're stored cool and dry and they are not deteriorating, et cetera. Now, back in the teens, when they used cotton cord, cotton in the inside of the tire would rot, but polyester, nylon, rayon, any of that sort of stuff won't. But so, in the early days of Coker Tire Company, it was harder for us to source product than it was to sell it.
Right.
I remember we had a relationship with a Goodyear plant in Brazil, and we sourced, I think, we didn't have any money to speak of, but we bought 1,000 Model A tires and shipped them into Chattanooga, and I unwrapped them and wrapped them and stacked them. And then at that time, I was typing every single label. Then I got really upscale, and I got a fax machine, and I could communicate with people by fax, but they had that stupid paper that, if you didn't make a copy of it, it'd go away. It would fade out.
It would fade in like a year or less.
Fade out. But the days and the wonderful people I met, car people are the best people in the world. And, I just have to say that God's really blessed me to grow up in a family that loved God, loved vintage cars, and loved their family. And we're still that way. I love car people.
Me too.
I love to help folks. Even if they bought something from Coker Tire Company next door and they mess on you, I still get involved and try to fix it. But because it was my baby.
It's your name on the door still, regardless. And it's a name that, if they had gotten rid of, you really would have realized that they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, that's a name synonymous with the tire business and all of that. And, it's interesting. What's your take on these cars that are like a specific tire for a specific car, and that's it? I mean, what do you do in that case? There's only 50 cars in the world, and,
Well, I've got a really fun story. I've had some of those. I was at Hershey one year, and Rob Meyer came up to the stand at Hershey, and he said, "Corky, I got a problem. I've got a bet with Robert Lee out of Utah that I will have his Daimler 66 on the field at Pebble Beach." And he said, "We got the motor. We got a problem with the motor, and I think Roush is going to fix the motor. But it's got a really weird tire size on it that nobody in the world makes." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" It was a 750-22. Well, I figured out how to solve that problem. I changed the bead rings on another mold, and because the dimensions were the same, and I made about 20 tires, and this car had 2 spares on the back, but it was a huge big tire. And so anyway, about 2 weeks after, I said I could do it, and I'll get them to you by June so that you can get the car on the field by August. And about 2 weeks later, Rob called me, and he had told me how much he bet Mr. Lee that he had, and it was more than some of those cars that sold in market. Anyway, so he said, "How much are you going to charge me for those tires?" I forgot to ask you, how much are you going to charge me? And I said, "Rob, you're a dummy. You told me that you bet the guy 100 grand. So it'll be a little less than 100 grand.
Yeah, just a little, right? Oh, I love that. Because, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, it's a supply and demand issue, right? And the supply is not there, then you got, and listen, it ain't nothing to build these tires. It's not like that you just can go, push a button and all of a sudden you got a tire.
But, I think one of the secrets that you guys notice also in business, you gotta give a value, a fair value for a great product. You got to have good people servicing it. You've got to do what is right. Always do what is right. You got to stand behind it. Yeah. And that's what we did at Coker Tire Company through the years. And, I think if we ever had a problem with somebody, we fixed it to the best of our ability. And that's what you got to do but you got to give a fair price for the.
Listen, the guys that we hire here are car specialists. I don't care if you don't need to know how to sell. You just need to be a car guy and be able to talk to a guy about cars. But you're right. I mean, listen, if a guy calls up and there's something wrong and it's something that we've done and created, then by golly, we're going to fix it whatever it takes. I don't care what it takes. It doesn't matter. And my wife is the business end of it, so I always get that look, those cheater glasses she's looking at me above, what do you mean you gave them this or that or whatever? I said, well, it was the right thing to do. If we claim a car has ice cold air condienting and it doesn't even have a compressor, then we've probably erred to the side of not favorable to the buyer. So, and listen, it's one of those things that it's a judgment call in business. And but my partner said something fascinating yesterday, and this is so great. He says, enemies are expensive. And I'd never heard anybody say that. And I thought it's so true. If you don't try to do the right thing,
that's good.
And it costs you a lot of money, and it costs you way more money than if you'd have just given the guy, I love it when I go, would $200 make you happy? And the guy says, I promise I won't say anything bad about you on Google. And I'm like, well, then here's $200,
Martin Luther King said something very similar, and it's about the same kind of deal, but it a little more spiritual. He said, hate is too big a burden to bear. I choose it.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? That's so true. Well, it's funny when you listen, the older you get, the more you hear these sayings and things like that. And they stick with you. It's like back in the old days, I know we all wish we'd paid more attention to when grandmother was telling stories, because there's some stuff I'd really like to ask her now that she's long gone. And I know she told me, but I was like, oh yeah, blah, whatever, grandma, I know before we go, I want to talk about one other thing that we haven't talked about, and that's SEMA. Your involvement in SEMA is, obviously a huge part of your life and a huge part for SEMA. I think it was a win-win situation, right?
Yeah, it really was. I was the first participant in the restoration market to be chairman of the board. I served on the SEMA board of directors for 22 years, I think. And, we legitimized the collector car hobby into the industry. And when I was chairman of the board, we had 7,000 member businesses. It was a $40 billion trade industry. And, I was really involved in making sure that we had, political representation in Washington. And boy, do we have a problem now. If you know anybody that are SEMA members, make sure that you support them, especially the board of directors, because the overreaching federal government today is just trying to put our collector car business out of business. And, with overreaching EPA standards, it's just ridiculous. The overreach by executive order to mandate that, 70% of the cars are electric by 35. I think, it'll go away when more sane people are in the administration. And I'm sorry, I'm not talking politics.
I am hearing you 100%.
I spoke one more thing, Stewart. Any of your listeners that are members of SEMA, there's a young lady that is running for chair-elect from Hellwig. Melanie Smith is running for chair-elect. She is the right person for the job. I endorse her, and I think that if you are a member of SEMA, you're going to be voting for a new chair-elect soon. Vote for Melanie. She is the right person for the job and will do a great job.
I hear you 100%. There's things that we do every day, and more so with title work and paperwork on classic cars and old cars, and these ridiculous things that 4-digit serial number on a Duesenberg has got the same serial number as a Kubota tractor, and the Kubota tractor comes up stolen in Ohio, and all of a sudden you can't get a Duesenberg titled in Florida because they don't even know that one's not even the same. Anyway, I'm with you 100%, and I'm a proud card-carrying member of SEMA.
I misspoke. Her last name is White. She is Hellwig. She is the CEO of Hellwig Manufacturing in Visalia, California, but her married name is White now. So
I will definitely pass that on to all our people. We'll mention that in our newsletter that we send out on Monday as well.
Yeah, if you would I mean, she's amazing.
Absolutely. So, and then now you have the Honest Charley Speed Shop, and you've got your collection of cars and motorcycles there. I read a funny story about Charlie Card, the guy who started Honest Charley's, used to own a restaurant in downtown Chattanooga, and he would leave the register open, and you made your own change when you had breakfast or lunch or whatever.
That's how he got his name, Honest Charley. It was actually a cigar box, and he said, "I'm honest, or you make your own change." Because he had learned that you either had to be in the kitchen making the food, or you had to be at the register. And he chose the kitchen. And after that, he started the speed business. He was the second inductee into the Hall of Fame, SEMA Hall of Fame. I was about the 40th, I think. But he was an amazing guy. They were the largest speed distributor warehouse in the United States of America through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they just got tired of business and didn't go bankrupt or anything like that. The heirs decided they didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and we see that happen a lot, and sometimes you just can't blame people. You want things to continue, but it's not our choice necessarily, right?
Yeah.
So I got to ask one last important question.
Okay.
Are you a Tennessee Vol?
I am a Tennessee Vols fan. Now I'm married to a little girl who I love, right? Cleveland, Ohio. So I gotta be kind of partial to the Buckeyes too.
I hear you.
We got a good team. We're doing some good stuff. So absolutely. I'm sure you being close to the stadium there, spending some time in Knoxville, you probably are too. I hope so.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and all my buddies up there are still there. My buddy Harry Dinwiddie, who races down there with you from Knoxville, races Corvettes. I think he hadn't missed a home game since 1958 or something. Just knee deep in it. And people don't understand Tennessee football like those of us who are knee deep in it do. But I about got my Kansas City, Missouri wife there, and it's only taken 23 years. So, hey, Corky, thanks so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you in October down in Chattanooga.
Well, any of your listeners want to come to see some really cool old cars, race cars, airplanes, buses, trucks, all kinds of stuff. The Coker Museum is open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4.
Take care, man. Good to talk to you.
Brother. Good to see you.
You've been listening to the Classic Auto Mall Show with your host, Stewart Howden. Executive producer, Steve Safier. Produced and engineered by yours truly, J.R. Russ. Available on ClassicAutomall.com, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Music courtesy of the Pat Travers Band. For tour dates, contact, and stuff, visit PatTravers.com. Produced by Car Smarts Media. Copyright all rights reserved.